Praise Yahuwah,
Praise Yahuwah
all the time,
all the time.
praise Yahuwah,
Praise Yahuwah,
make me feel fine,
make me feel fine.
So the objective that I have in mind for this evening is a couple things. On the one hand, I think that what you all want to do is understand the language a bit, or want to know how to understand the language. And I had made this chart. Is there anybody who is not familiar with this? What this is? Haven't seen it? Okay, so these are strange image. Okay, so we don't happen to have one available at the moment. I live up in Portland, Oregon, and I was doing some work over in Sonora. I didn't happen to bring any with me. So this PDF file is on the Dropbox or on my website that somebody has put up for me, and you all are welcome to it. There's a PDF file. We have some actual charts that my wife has mailed out to people. It's about 4 feet by 28 inches or so, which you're welcome to have. I just don't have any with me today. So I will make reference to this chart, but the chart is simply a tool by which to explain what the alphabet means. So part of the study of the alphabet, as far as I'm concerned, is to say this is not studying a foreign language. Even if you don't speak Hebrew, this is not studying a foreign language. This is studying your native tongue. In that, I haven't studied Judaism, but I understand there's a difference between what's modern day rabbinical Judaism as compared to scriptural studying the Torah. I was raised as a Christian, but this has nothing to do with Christianity. But this does have something to do with recognizing the Mashiach, or the Messiah, which is to say, as per John 1:1, the Word made flesh. So it's not my intention to insult anybody, but it is my intention to try to clarify certain matters by which the truth might be made evident. And it's my belief, based on studying the language, that the truth is actually in the Paleo Hebrew alphabet. So let me ask one thing first. Can you all back there hear me okay? Yes? Okay. We have a whiteboard over here, and I think I'll lose some of you if I step that direction.
There's more room here.
Well, so let me address a couple things first. If you can't hear something, or if something is really confusing, please feel free to raise your hand or ask, because I'm not trying to, as it were, present a certain teaching or present a sermon that I have to keep on a certain track, and I don't want to lose anybody along the way. At the same time, some people, I believe, know more than others regarding some basic substance of the Hebrew itself, and to belabor too much the basics or the preliminary, somebody's going to feel like, come on, get to the better point. So I usually try to cover a range. Some people will think it's too primitive or beginning kindergarten, and some people will feel, gee, it's way too heady, too much to process. I'm not trying to impress anybody with anything. I'm trying to clarify things for your sake. So just so you know, whatever I'm trying to say or do here is for your benefit. And if you're not benefiting because I'm not addressing certain matters, please feel free to bring those matters to bear. Because one thing I've found is that we all have a typical way of thinking and processing generally. And if one person doesn't understand it, it's probably because half a dozen other people don't understand it either. And so if you bring up a point that I'm not making clear, perhaps everybody would benefit to stop for a moment and make that particular. So on the one hand, is there anybody that knows nothing about Hebrew? Not the alphabet, not anything. Is there anybody that knows nothing? Okay, you guys don't. Some. Okay, can I ask you then, and this is just as a frame of reference, why are you here to understand Hebrew? What is it about the notion of Hebrew which has attracted your attention enough to disrupt your entire day to come here to hear something about Hebrew?
I thought, oh, my brothers and sisters together, and maybe this guy has a different way of sharing it, that I get a different picture so I can get through the darn thing. Well, you know, nothing against Christian. He's wonderful. He's so patient. But, you know, it's like I'm going, you know.
Well, hopefully what I'm about to present will do that very matter. Okay, is anybody here from what I might call the Jewish persuasion or Jewish frame of mind ideology or religious construct? Nobody? How about Christian? Does anybody come from a Christian background? Pretty much everybody? Okay, so then let me ask you this question. And this is something that which I had to ask for myself. What's the matter with them Jews? Why don't they recognize their own Messiah? You ever ask that question? Does anybody have an answer, a practical reason why does the Jews, and now when I say the Jews, I'm taking thousands of people and lumping them unfairly into one big pot, just like all those people, and you know how they are, you know, whether it's, you know, pick your favorite race or gender or, you know, nationality. I'm intentionally being unfair because it's like there's none of them here, right? So why don't they recognize him? Does anybody have a reason other than quoting the verse that says, oh, their hearts were hardened on purpose until the fullness of the Gentiles come in, whatever that means? Yes, you have a reason?
I think it's because the way we presented the Messiah as Christians, the way the Christians have presented the Messiah doesn't fit their Messiah at
And
all.
what does that mean? How does
They expected the Messiah to come to restore Israel and to bring a return back to the Torah, and Christianity's not done that. Okay. And so they see the Christian Jesus, if you will, and it doesn't fit the messianic. However you could say it, you know,
the expected job function of the Messiah hasn't been accomplished by the Jesus Christ they've been presented. Okay, and you had your hand raised?
Yeah, they were looking for the second coming of Jesus. They were looking for a king to rule and reign.
Which is pretty much what he was just saying, in that okay, does anybody know where they get the expectation that he's going to rule as a conquering hero comes from? And do you know what those two prophecies are?
One was a suffering Savior, and one was a Redeemer, right? Kind of rough around the edges.
Does anybody not know what he's referring to? Everybody knows what he means? Okay. Okay, just so you know, if I ask the question, does anybody not know? See, if I say, does everybody know, then everybody, oh yeah, sure we know. But if I say, does anybody not know, and somebody raise their hands, then I'll explain it, otherwise we can move on. But what he's talking about, and I don't know that this is necessarily stated verbatim in the scriptures, but there's this, you might say it's possibly even a Talmudic teaching that there's two messiahs or two roles of one messiah that they don't necessarily know which it is. One is what they call Ben Yosef, or the son of Joseph, or coming in the form or the model as if Joseph, the story of Joseph, was a parable. And the other one was Ben Dawid, or son of David, in which case he's the conquering king. And so there was a YouTube video, and I haven't watched many YouTubes at all. I didn't get a computer until recently, and I have almost no time, but I have seen a couple little things. One of them, a Christian, has gone to Jerusalem, and he's standing there right in front of the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, and he's talking to a rabbi, and the rabbi's very congenial, and he says, tell you what, let me show you the problem. Ask me to perform a miracle to prove that I'm the Messiah. And the Christian minister guy's like, well, he says, come on, just ask me anything. He says, okay, walk on water. And he says, I'll do it next time. That proves I'm the Messiah. So this is the way the Jews think, you see. The Christian excuse for why he did not come as a conquering king is, oh, he'll do that next time. So they take everything that the Jews are expecting him to do and defer it to his next time, and take the things that he did the first time, but misrepresent his teachings. So the Jews, for example, if you go into Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy, it's either 13. It says, this is Yahuwah himself. He says, okay, if there's a so-called prophet, a dreamer, and their dream or their prophecy doesn't come true, they're false prophet. Their dreams are of no account, pay no attention to them. Now, if there's a prophet or a dreamer, and it does come true, such that you might think, oh, this guy's inspired, this guy is gifted, anointed by the Holy Spirit, the Ruach. If he tries to lead you astray from doing the things I have already committed and trusted to you, this is a test from me, I'm paraphrasing here, to see whether you guys will quickly stray from the path, the way, in Hebrew it's the word derek, that I've already instructed you. And once it's been determined that you will not stray from the path, now what you're supposed to do is put that prophet or dreamer to death because he has tried to lead you astray. Okay, now, we could cut to the chase very simply and say, does Jesus Christ teach his followers to walk astray from the path of the Torah? Yes or no?
Jesus Christ does. Jesus Christ?
Jesus. Does Jesus Christ have his followers? There was a fellow that posted on a friend's website just the other day. He said, it would be a sin. This is what somebody, I don't know who he is, he wrote this. He said, it would be a sin if I tried to keep Shabbat, because I would be trying to walk out my own righteousness, thus turning my back on the impure. So if I tried to do anything he instructed me to do, it would be a sin. Meanwhile, the definition of sin is to not do what Yahweh said to do. So here this fellow, whoever he is, has taken the instructions of Yod He Vav He, flipped them around backwards and said the teaching of his Jesus is to do the exact opposite of what Yahweh said. Should we be following that Messiah? But yet, I'm not putting all Christians in a box, but what I'm saying is there is teaching going out. There's an ideology which absolutely refutes and contradicts the Torah under the guise of a better covenant, a covenant of grace, a covenant of life. But Yahweh said, in these words is your life, your strength, your health, your wealth, your blessing, and your supremacy over all the other nations if you walk in these ways. And there's nothing mystical, occultic about these ways. It's not Kabbalah, which is basically esoteric Jewish mysticism sort of stuff. What it is simply do righteousness. Fair, balanced scales of commerce in the way you conduct your affairs with one another. That's how you love your neighbor as yourself. That's essentially what the word mishpat is, which is essentially even dealings with one another. And then the other half of the most important matters, the greatest commandment, and he says, it's what's known as the Shema, love your, in English, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's love your neighbor as yourself, which is mishpat, balancing of scales. But then this other matter of how do you love Yod He Vav He with all your heart, your soul, your strength. Well, he gave us in the Ten Commandments, he said, essentially, his name. Now, in the Christian world that I brought up in, what's the first commandment of the Ten Commandments? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I am the Lord your God, shall not have other gods before me.
Okay. I am the Lord your God is not part of the commandment. It's thou shalt have no other gods before me. But in Hebrew, it's not 10 commandments. It's 10 devarim, which are matters. And the first matter is, Anoki Yahweh Elohecha. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Period. It's identity. The second one is, don't have any other. And then the word in Hebrew, I'll write this down, is Ayin Lamed Pei Nun Yod. Al Panei. And so you could say, well, that means above me, in regard of, because of, on account. It's something in reference, and it's literally the word yoked to. And this word is where we get the word pan, which is the same as the word for bread. Showbread is the same thing, but it's basically the word for face. Or you might say concerned, yoked to my face, my presence. And he says, do not make for yourselves. There's this one particular phrase called Elohim Achrim. If you look in English, it's translated other gods or gods of others. I don't expect you to recognize these words and letters, but I'm just writing up here just for the record. The word Elohim Achrim is Aleph Lamed Hey, the word that's typically translated as God, and plural is this here. And then Achrim is Aleph Mem, and that's where they come up with the word other. So he says, do not allow there to be or make for yourselves or k'nei. And it's translated, thou shalt not have any other gods in my face or above me or in reference to me. Well, here's an interesting thing. We'll get to the meaning of the letter so you'll see this in just a little bit. But this letter, Pei, is a mouth. Okay? And Nun is something that you might say it's kind of shaped like a lightning bolt, jumps out of, like a fish jumping out of the water. So this word for face literally is comprised of, which opens, something jumps out of the mouth, and then this word that means my is actually a working hand. So here as a Hebrew word picture, a mouth, something then which is active and vibrant and vital, jumps out of the mouth, and the hand means it causes it that jumps out of a mouth that's dynamic and makes something happen. Words? Okay. As this riddle, the word for face is the same as word. For face can be put together as a bit of a riddle as the word for word. This word achar, dictionary, other, next, strange, subsequent, delayed, retarded, postponed. It's something odd that you don't recognize that's going to appear in the future. So another way you could read this phrase, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim. And when I say Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, sometimes people think, what did you say his name was? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh? Is that his? No, I'm spelling the 4 letters. The 4 letters of his name are Yod, Hey, Wah, Hey. In modern Hebrew, it would be a Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. 4 letters. So in Greek, those are referred to as tetra, meaning 4, grammaton, where we get the word grammar, which means letters. So 4 inscriptions or 4 letters, tetragrammaton, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. It says, so at the very beginning, the first matter of the 10 commandments is, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim. The second matter is, do not allow there to be or cause there to be Elohim Achrim al Panei. So what's he really telling us? If you read the English definition, like I said, it can mean don't have them in my face, don't have them above me, don't have them, don't carve an idol and bow down to it? Well, we're not carving an idol and bowing down to it. We're not doing that. Let's just move on with the next one. No, wait a minute. What's he saying? If the word Panei meaning face is really a picture of something that comes out of my mouth, which is a word, and this is yoked to my face, and it's somebody that comes later in the future that is different, take the standardized, iconic figure of Jesus Christ, of the Christian religion. Do you think that Abraham, Moses, David, Joseph, Noah, Adam, would any of those guys recognize the story? If he himself says, you have heard it said, do not work on the Sabbath day, but I say to you, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath, and you can work if you darn well please, because any day is the same as the next, and it just doesn't matter. He didn't say that. Yahweh says, I am giving you my law, my commandments, my statutes, my precepts, which is the constitution of the kingdom of heaven, which you are obligated and responsible to perform with all your heart, vigorously, vitality, with zeal. And yet, I've had a Christian minister scream in my face, there is no law! Is that true or is it not true? Yeshua in the book of Revelation says, anyone who creates, crafts, manufactures, or perpetuates falsehood has no place in my kingdom. Now, if a minister tells me there is no authoritative command, and Yahweh says, if you enter my kingdom, you must, with zeal of your heart, do what I say. Is that falsehood? And if Yeshua said, no one who crafts and perpetuates falsehood has any place in my kingdom, is that minister in his kingdom? I'm not saying my friend's going to hell, but what I'm saying is, I believe these to be very, very serious matters. So then, if this word achar means other, next, strange, strange compared to what? Compared to what Yahweh just revealed of himself. He just did 10 plagues, proved to the world his identity and his favor of this particular people group. These 12 tribes assembled, speaking from Mount Sinai, and says, I'm showing you who I am. Anybody who contradicts, diction, contradicts, different words, different meanings, dictionary, right? It has to do with contradicts. Anybody who gives you different words than the words that came out of my mouth, and they yoke them to my face. Yoke to my face is an Elohim Achrim. Do not allow or cause there to be any other imagery, any other words than what I've told you. And the proof of whether it's the true Messiah or truly of Elohim is you have to take his words and compare them to the words being given. I spent 50 years in the church believing we have a new covenant. The old covenant was done away with. We have a new people group because the other people group was done away with. And all of a sudden, one day I happened to bump into a group of people that were studying the Torah. Okay, fine. It's the Old Testament. I've studied the Old Testament my whole life. No problem. You go there and they're reading it. Okay, they're mentioning an occasional word in Hebrew here and there, and it's like, okay, big deal. No harm, no foul. No conflict. And then I met somebody a guy named Michael Rood, who was giving a talk on the feasts of the Lord. I don't know about but hey, I've heard that the Jews keep some festivals. What's all this about? Again, no conflict, because after all, Jesus is the King of the Jews, right? I mean, didn't he keep these things? And so it's just a matter of interest. Hello.
Hi, sorry.
No problem. Welcome.
Be quiet, thank you.
So, in looking at, there's 3 different places where the feasts are mentioned, but you might say the primary one is Leviticus 23. Yahweh himself starts right off the top and said, these are my Moedim, or Moedi actually is what he said. And the question is, well, what does that mean? Well, it's translated feast or festival or appointed time. And we could elaborate on what that means, but I'll try to cut to the surface here, the chase of getting into what these letters mean. So I'm going to try to restrict some of what I say, but any one of these things could be elaborated if you choose. The point is, when he says, my appointed time, the word Moedim happens to be spelled Mem, Vav, Ayin, Dalet. That's Moed. Moedi means my, and if you put the M on, just like here with Elohim and Achim, it makes it a plural. Okay, we hear, oh, these are the festivals. These are the feasts of the Lord. Well, it's not the Lord. It's Yod-Vav-He. It's Yahweh. Or Yehovah, or that's a whole other matter. How do you pronounce it? Yahweh. But the point is, they're his Moedim. Well, if you don't know anything about Hebrew, you just say, well, I don't know how to say the word Moedim, so I'll just call them feasts or festivals. The problem is, Mem as a prefix makes it an instrument, a device, or a location of what? Of what the word is about. This word Ayin Dalet, otherwise known as, you pronounced it maybe as Ed, or kind of odd because the IN is the equivalent of the English letter O. It literally means witness and testimony. It's the legal presentation in a court of law for validating the truth. And if you look in the dictionary for this word spelled ayin dalet yod, it means I have ornamented myself, adorned, jewelry. I have bejeweled myself. Wait a minute. These are not Jewish holidays. This is Yahweh's personal ornamentation of His jewelry. And your jewelry, your treasure, is the best stuff you've got. He could have invented anything. He invented the galaxies. You look at from Hubble telescope and you see these nebulas and stuff. It's like, wow, this guy has quite an imagination. Spectacular array. And the most spectacular thing that he could possibly invent to ornament himself with, which is to say, enhance his, not his image, but his countenance, is the Moedim. And we've been told, oh, those old stupid things the Jews do, and then Constantine made it illegal to regard them. As a matter of fact, the Roman Empire had laws, other places too, Spanish Inquisition and such, they had laws that said anybody who dares to regard these things will be tortured and killed. And yet Yahweh says, this is me in my finest array. Well, if you do away with the witness and testimony, you have a lie. You have a deception. And then you say, we have a different God with different holidays, a different testimony, a different word. It's an Elohim Achrim, and yet if we say that the Messiah that we worship as God is the Word, it's an absolute affront and contradiction to everything he just said. It's not true. Well, now what are we supposed to do? Well, aside from being very disturbed or thinking that I'm speaking blasphemies, it's a tragic, catastrophic, mental, spiritual event. It's just like having a car that you're thinking you're living your life and you're believing in Jesus, got your sins forgiven, going to heaven, and just wham, the car slams into a button at the bridge, and it's like, it's a wreck. Now what do? I trusted, I believed my teachers, and my teachers were what? Lying to me? Now either the teachers just don't know, in which case they're ignorant, or they're lying on purpose because their seminaries or their churches told them to. A friend of mine was for generations in the SDA church, and he'd be talking to his minister about this stuff when he found about this Torah stuff, and then his minister one day says, what do you want me to do, lose my job? Wow, are you kidding me? This is about your job? You're getting paid to stand up here and lie? And we're talking about not only eternal destiny, salvation, but we're talking about the kingdom of heaven. So every day we sit here and say, oh, our Father in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. And you're lying to save your own job because you don't want to get out and pump gas or flip burgers or pound nails. Really? What profanity. What a horror. How do we know if we are worshiping the right deity? How do we know whether we're on the right path, the right track? How do we know that we have our eyes on the right Messiah? Any one of us might have been born in any other continent, in any different era, might have been born as a Greek, a Roman, a Mongol, an African, may have been born in Alaska as a Inuit Indian, I mean, with no missionaries going there. We're surrounded by ice. How would you know if you're on the right path? So let me ask you this. Ask anybody who wants to raise their hand. If we, being brought up in whatever culture and day and time, religion, government, civilization that it might be, we're taught to believe that we're right. As a matter of fact, if you listen closely, there's many Christian songs that talk about we who choose to believe, have faith in your faith, just believe you're right. Well, I could say that maybe the Incas and Mayans believed that they were right. Maybe the sun god worshippers, maybe the people who were worshiping the Pharaoh believed that they were right. Just because you believe with all your heart does not make you right. But now I'm not saying, okay, we're all going to hell. No, that's very Christian, but I'm not saying that, because Yahuwah himself has to look at the heart and determine. As a Christian, I was taught, gee, if you're so unfortunate as to be born in the jungle or where there was no missionary, no Bible, no word to tell you of Jesus the Savior, too bad, you're going to hell. Oh, gee, we better be a missionary and go tell them so they don't have to go to hell. But what about all the generations previously? They're going to hell. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there is a benefit to knowing the truth. And there might be other factors that are not Christian ideology concerning what do you know and what do you believe. Okay, but I'm not going to address those, just so you know. What I'm trying to address here is to say, okay, I've tried to present the fact that we can't necessarily believe what we were told. And as per this one verse of 4 words, I'm trying to present the fact that the English translations we have don't necessarily tell us what's really going on in this instruction. And the very thing that I, who am illiterate, when I was looking at stuff, I was illiterate. I didn't know Hebrew. I'm just looking at the meaning of words and letters and open up the dictionary and tell you what the word achar means. And the word Elohim means God. And al-paneh means yoke to the thing that jumps out of my mouth, which is a word. And it's like, hey, the Jesus Christ I was taught looks like he fits that description, and now I'm reading the second commandment which says, you guys better make sure you absolutely do not do this. And I spent 50 years doing it, and every pastor and teacher I ever had is doing the same thing, and my whole country and culture, and they keep doing the same thing and say, it doesn't matter because we believe. Well, if it doesn't matter if you believe, why did he say this? Why did he tell us as if it mattered? Yes?
Would you say that again exactly as the commandment was worded? How would it be in
Lo, here, in Hebrew, in writing in Paleo Hebrew, he'd say lo, that's the word for negative. It means no, not, or none. Yi is yod, hey, yod, hey. Now, if it was Yod He Vav He, that would be Yahweh's name. But Yahweh's name means cause to exist, or the one who makes something exist. So Yod He means don't cause there to exist or make for yourselves, because as this working hand, Lo Yi, Lecha means unto yourself or for yourself. Elohim Achrim Al Paneh. That's what that word says. So do not cause there to be or make for yourselves strange gods, other, future, next, coming later. Of course, the idea of 1500 BC was approximately the days of Moses, so Mount Sinai. So it was 1500 years later that Yeshua shows up. Is he an Elohim Achrim? I would maintain that the true Messiah cannot be an Elohim Achrim. He has to be identical to Yod He Vav He. Now the disciples said to Yeshua, hey, look, we hear what you're saying, and that's cool and all, but show us the Father. Show us the Father. And that'll be all we need. We're done. Just show us the Father. And Yeshua said, don't you guys get it? I only say what I hear him saying. I only do what I see him doing. If you've seen me, you've seen him. Now, here's another disturbing question. Is Yeshua claiming to be the Father? His voice is the same voice. His heart is the same heart. The actions are the same actions. But is this human being, the finite one, actually the infinite one? Now, I'm not necessarily going to answer that question. I'm just provoking a thought. And I'll show you why it's a provocative thought which is answered in the alphabet. And then you can make of it what you will. But I'm not trying to tell anybody anything about your big sinner, you're going to hell. But I'm saying this stuff confronts my own mind, and I now have to wrestle with these matters and saying, and I spent my life doing this, if I worship Jesus Christ as God, am I breaking this commandment? Is this what Yahweh wants us to do, or is this the very reason why the Jews will not accept the Messiah, Jesus Christ, that has been presented to them, because he breaks this commandment? And he leads his followers astray as per Deuteronomy 13, telling them to turn their back on the Torah that Yahweh says was forever. In other words, we as the Christian doctrines can point to the Jews and say, you guys have been blinded until the fullness of the Gentiles have come in, and then some of you guys will be saved and get to come back. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's the Christians which are lost, and the Jews are saying, when you guys finally wake up and come back to worshiping Yahweh as your Elohim, then maybe we can get some stuff together. But don't keep thinking as a Christian, all the Jews are lost and are going to hell, because that's what the Christians say, when meanwhile the Jews are saying, you guys are blind and ignorant, can't you see the words? Well, no, we can't see the words because they gave it to us in English, Greek, and Latin. But I believe the truth is in the Hebrew. So one reason for studying the Hebrew is to see the truth. The truth. How can I prove whether the truth is in Hebrew or not? Okay, so going back to the other question, out of anything we choose to believe, what mechanism, or is there a mechanism, has the Almighty given us by which to determine the truth? Just so you know, just kind of for fun, sometimes I ask strangers, like we're sitting at a restaurant a couple different times talking, and the waiter comes up. It's like, we're having a conversation. The waiter comes up and it's like walking right into our world. And so it's like, hey, let me ask you a question. Is it possible to know the truth? Or what is the truth? And some people say, there is no truth. The truth is whatever you want it to be. Is that true? Is it true there is no truth? Suddenly they're stuck. They can't answer the question, right? So, but think about that. Other than that we choose to believe, which is a Christian ideology, is there any mechanism that Yahweh gave us that we can know for sure that we understand the truth, comprehend the truth, believe the truth, are on the path of truth, and are right there? And I'll tell you right out of the gate, the Christian model doesn't have that says, oh, we believe we know the truth. We believe in Jesus and He's the truth. And so we believe that we're on the true path. But I just tried to prove that that is not the true path. So somebody can conflict and say, well, I don't believe what you're saying. But I'm trying to be serious. So here, can anybody tell me how to know for sure that we have the truth and that we are absolutely on the right path that nobody can refute? Does anybody have an answer to that?
Know his language? Or know his...
And what does that mean?
I know his...
How would one practically apply that? In other words,
to learn that.
okay, well, here's the thing. If your car is misfiring and you say, I got to take it to the mechanic, you bring it in. Now, in the olden days, you might have had to go to a smart mechanic. If he says, I've got some experience here, let me listen to it, let me test a few things, let me open up see if you have enough oil. Okay, nowadays, you take it to a diagnostic center, right? They hook it up to the computer. Okay, for you to say, well, you look at the language, how do you use the language to tell whether you're believing the truth or not?
It's a pattern. So he has to fit the pattern.
She says it has to fit the pattern.
Yeshua said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free.
He said something before that. Did you know what he said right before that sentence?
No, go ahead.
Does somebody want to look up, does somebody know where that verse is that she just quoted? You will know the truth and truth will set you free.
He says, your word is truth.
He said your word is truth.
Your word is truth.
Well, he said your word is truth, but the Christians believe in the word, and yet I just was trying to say that it's a lie. So I want to try to zero in. I'm trying to show the problem so that I can show the solution, just so you know what I'm doing here.
It's in
Yeah.
John 8:32.
He says
Jo-
if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed.
If the Son sets you free. Okay, now I could say, I believe in Jesus and I feel good about it. I don't have to keep the Torah. I don't have to go to church on Saturday. I don't have to keep the festivals, and I feel great. The Son has set me free. I believe in the Pauline epistles and the fact that there is no law. So that can be you fooling yourself based on some premise which is not necessarily translated or interpreted correctly. Okay, she's going to read this verse that you just quoted, but with the previous sentence.
John 8:31.
John 8:31.
To the Jews who had believed him, Yeshua said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples.
If you hold to my
Then
teaching, you'll
you
be
will
my
know the
disciples.
truth.
Then you will know the truth. If you hold to my teaching. Okay, does anybody know what the Talmud is?
Yes.
Okay, is the Talmud good or bad? Bad. Okay, What does the word Talmud mean?
It means to be an understudy.
An understudy.
Yeah.
Okay. The
I think I remember it's confused. I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. Talmud's
Okay.
easy.
Okay, hang on. We just read that Yeshua said, if you hold to my teachings, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Is that good or bad?
Good.
That's good. Okay. But the Talmud is bad. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm not trying to pick on him, but I'm just trying to take one voice so we can zero in. Okay. Does anybody know how to spell the word teaching in Hebrew? I can't hear. Torah. No. Torah is instructions, but the word teach and learn is the same word. It actually is one of the letters of the alphabet. It's Lamed. The letter Lamed in Paleo, in modern Hebrew, it looks more like that, right? The word Lamed, L-A-M-E-D. It means literally exactly teach and learn. Has anybody ever heard of the word Talmudim? What does it mean? Disciples are taught ones. So the word disciple, C-I-P-L-E, disciple comes from the word discipline. Right? Disciple, discipline, having the kind of the Greek mind. But lamed, if you put the T in front of it, talmedim, plural, it's simply taught ones. The Talmud is the teachings. If you sing a song, you're rehearsing the instructions. That's Talmud. If you listen to a sermon, you're listening to a guy. What we're doing right now is Talmud, teaching and learning. Is that bad?
No.
It can't be bad. So here what happened is you inherited some flack about a certain Hebrew word based on the fact that the rabbis have this thing they call the Talmud, which is a set of books, and because of lack of accuracy, it now set up within you a disposition against something which is actually very good. Joe, what do you mean by Talmud? I went to a Jewish, the reason I'm picking on you like this, because not because it's you, but I went into a Jewish bookstore to get a Torah, Tanakh. And the guy said, oh, what are you doing with that? And are you Jewish? And I said, no, I'm not Jewish. I just, want to study the language, the Torah. And he says, I said, not the Talmud, but the Torah. And he says, don't the scriptures tell us to regard the Talmud? I thought, wait a minute, he's right. Because I knew that the word Talmud means teach and learn. It's a trick question. If I had said, no, we're not supposed to regard Talmud, he would know I was an idiot, because Talmud means teach and learn. I'm not calling you an idiot, sorry about that. I felt like he would know that I didn't know anything. But what he says, doesn't the scriptures tell us to regard the Talmud? You could say, yeah, but the Talmud wasn't the words of Yahweh. They were what's taught through the priests, the rabbis, wait a minute. How many times did Yahweh say, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, speak to Aharon and his sons, saying, that's Talmud. Teach and learn through the Kohanim, through the priests. It's like, okay, what I'm trying to say is, we have been taught to disparage Brother Yehuda and all his studies of the Torah because we're so smart and we're so right and he's so stupid and wrong. It's not true. But I'm not a proponent of rabbinical Judaism. I'm just trying to clarify a few things. Okay? Now,
Where is the dividing line?
dividing line of what?
Well, learning, teaching. We learned from teachers
Yes?
in the church.
That's right. That's all Talmud, by the way, just so you know.
Right.
Okay.
And so we were taught lies,
Uh-huh.
basically, right? And so a lot of us come and then we go, wow, we're not falling into that again. So now I won't hear anybody else. If I can figure it out, if I can learn it, I might listen to, my sisters and brothers because I trust them or something, but I'm going to check it out the best I can.
So now the
then,
burden's on you.
Now, because I've been really to the point with the Talmud, like, I'm just not gonna listen to anything it has to say, you know?
There's some stuff that I gotta admit looks pretty wacky to me, but again, I'm not trying to disparage. I'm saying it looks wacky to me. Now, the burden of the responsibility is on you. Now, if you want to get together with your friends and say, gosh, what do we do with this stuff? Where is that dividing line? What do you listen to? What do you not listen to? That's the problem. What I'm going to try to show you in this is the answer to that dilemma. Okay, so to readdress once more, what is the mechanism that Yahweh gave his people to determine whether they're on the true path or not? Does anybody out there have anything to say about that? Any of you? Okay, I asked a preacher, is there any device which the Almighty gave us to know for sure whether we are standing on the truth? And he said, no, there's not. Now, does that mean it's just, I believe, you believe? Hey, we believe the same, let's get together. Or is it that we have a means to search and investigate to find the truth? Okay, so I'll ask one more time, open it up again. Can anybody think of an actual practical way to determine whether we are doing the truth, believing the truth, standing on the truth, on solid ground, and that this is the true identity of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh? It's not an Elohim Achrim, and if Jesus Christ doesn't represent the truth, how do we know who the true Messiah is? Yes?
The only thing I can think of is that if we are being set free from sin, from bondage, spiritual bondage, then whatever it is we were following that set us free, that shows us, I don't know, that kind of sounds subjective, but if you're basing it on these words of Yeshua and his teaching and you will be set free, that there has to be some kind of evidence of being set free. Does that make sense?
Yes, okay, but here I'll just counter that a little bit. I would think that even in Egypt, Moshe showed up and he starts doing a few special magic tricks, right? And Pharaoh said, that's nothing. He called in, I think the names were Janus and Jambres or something like that, and he says, do the same thing. And they started doing the same tricks. Right. He wasn't impressed. Why is it that there are other religions? Because there seems to be evidence of their credibility. It's not like every other religion of the world has no prayers answered, no miracles happened, no healings, no rising from the dead, nothing, no, oh, please help me, and oh, it worked out, thank you very much, whoever you're talking to. There seems to be enough stuff going on to validate a bunch of stuff that just isn't true. And you can have then belief, and it happens, and you can say, what is the power of the mind? What is the power of the human to project and cause an effect? That's a whole other thing, but there might be something going on there. Whether it's demonic, whether it's human, whether it's other powers, but that doesn't validate the fact that it's true. So the question, going back again to represent, did Yahuwah himself give us something that we can reference? Remember, going back to Deuteronomy 13, here's my words. If there's a prophet or a dreamer, and it comes true, but they lead you off this path, kill them. They're leading you astray, even if it comes true, even if your prayer's answered, even if it feels good, even if you believe it with all your heart. And you get warm, fuzzy feelings, and even you feel, oh, the Spirit was talking to me. And I'm not trying to discredit or downplay or mock it. I'm trying to deal with a very serious issue. How do we know the truth? Yes?
It's kind of like you said, the burden falls on us to learn the Word, because the truth is in His Word.
And how do you know the Word?
So the law and the prophets, they speak of Moshiach, his feast, his language. So it's in the language. It's in the language.
Okay, yeah, one more, Arjun.
Well, I was thinking too, because Yahushua himself said that if I don't go, then the Comforter won't come. So his Ruach HaKodesh bears witness, and he will teach you all things.
Well, the problem with that is that there's a lot of people in the church that believe they have the Holy Spirit teaching them things which counter the Torah. For example, you could say, well, the Torah says, keep these Moedim, and the Holy Spirit says, oh, you don't have to do that. Okay, so just so you know, we were going to have about an hour talk here and then break for dinner and then come back. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to cut to a chase here and try to show you something. Let's jump real quick to John 1:1. I'm going to throw out another riddle for you to think, and then I'll give you the answer without too much delay, okay? Take this as a riddle, not as a memory verse. A riddle, okay? so the big question of the riddle, and then I'll set it up, is what is the Word? Okay, what is the Word? In the beginning was the Word. Now this word was Elohim on the one hand, but it's with Elohim on the other hand. Now there's a big difference between being and being with. And I'm not trying to trick, right? This is esoteric, really deep meaning stuff. Okay, so I'm just trying to say this is like a riddle. Now, it is, but it's with, which means not is, but next to, which means other, not being. There's being, there's self, but then there's otherness, distinctly other, a separation, a divide between the one and the other. That's what the word with infers, okay? Now, through this word, all things that were made came into being. Now, this word then, through its own self, became flesh and walks among us. Just a minute, I'll finish setting up the riddle. Okay, now, so picture this. Picture this word as it was a lens. Picture the source of intention being like a light. This light, this source with an intention says, I want to create the universe. So the first thing it does is create this lens, the word, whatever this word is, and then it projects its intention, its light, through this lens, and the universe is put on display. The galaxies, the stars, the plants and animals, through this lens. And then this lens jumps into itself and becomes a manifestation of itself, this same word, in human flesh, that we put the label Yeshua on that human. What is that word?
Is it Aleph? Aleph.
Aleph is one letter. Now, why would you think it's that? Of all possible words, why would you say it's Aleph Tav?
Because at the very beginning, it had to be a beginning for there to be an end.
Okay.
And the end would be, how do you pronounce it? Shen? Or Sin?
Tav is the last letter.
Or Tav.
Okay, so there's another hand up here. Hang on a second, another hand up.
Salvation?
Salvation as a concept, you could say salvation, the word. Salvation is a function, but as a word itself, it wouldn't quite fit. You could say, is the word salvation Elohim? Elohim does salvation, but salvation itself is an action here. To cut to the chase here, I don't mean to keep it too short, but in the interest of time. You were saying it's what?
Aleph Tav.
She was saying Aleph Tav.
It's the entire alphabet.
I would project or propose that it's the entire alphabet as a word. As a word. Now think about this. If the very first thing Elohim created is the alphabet, think about that. The first thing he created is the alphabet. Then somehow he projects his intention, because the alphabet, they're letters. No, they're more than letters. This is the DNA of Yahweh himself. He constructed this thing which is not him, but it's fully him. It's with him, but he is the immaterial, infinite.
That's right.
And he created the finite material which does not betray his character, nature, essence, heart, mind, passion, but it represents it, but it's not him because he's the infinite one without form, and this is a finite thing with a form. And then he projects his purpose, his mind, his will to create the universe and all life, bam, through this lens, and everything is put on display. And then this word itself, which fully embodies him, becomes in through itself, enveloping in itself, and becomes a human, which is the pinnacle of all creation, humanity. And in its quintessential form, pure Torah, pure, every characteristic of Yahweh is in this man, and we label him the salvation of Yahweh. So the salvation of Yahweh is actually man being and doing in echad uniformity with the heart and the mind of every one of Yahweh's intention. That is where salvation is found. But the word itself would have to be this Aleph Bet. Because between Aleph and Tav, these 22 letters, is everything. Now in Deuteronomy 29:28, it says, the unseen or unrevealed, well, that's unto Yahweh. That's unto Elohim, meaning whatever he did not disclose, only he knows. Well, that's a simple logic, but he said, but that which is revealed is for us and our children to keep the words of this Torah. Now, the interesting thing about that, the words lenu ve'labenu are written with dots above them. In the verse right before that, he says, I'm going to paraphrase here, something to the effect of Moshe speaking prophetically, he gave us his stuff, we're going to betray him, and we're going to get scattered and lost, as it is until this day, but then we're going to come back to these words of the Torah. Now, the word for scattered is the word shalach, and the form of the verb there has an enlarged letter, lamed, which means teach and learn. It's an enlarged lamed in the word, but you can't see it in English, you can only see it in the Torah. I can show you later. Now, there's dots above the word lenu ve'labenu, which means to us and our children, which has to include us. You can say, okay, so what? There's these two kind of mysterious things, an enlarged lamed and dots above the word lenu ve'labenu. Now let's go to John 3. Nicodemus comes up to Yeshua and says, you know, we know you've come from Elohim, because nobody can do the things you do except Elohim is with them. He never gets to ask his question. Yeshua picks up the conversation and runs with it. Now, we've only got a couple minutes left. Yeshua then at one point says, are you not the great teacher of Israel? And you don't know these things? Then he goes on with John 3:16 and this and that. So here's a question, which we can't answer, we're running out of time. What was Nicodemus trying to ask? If you look at the spelling of the word Nicodemus, the word nicked is where we get to mark with dots, marks, like the dots on lenu ve'labenu. And the word memnun means where did he come from? And he said, are you not the great teacher? The letter lamed is the large teacher. I think there's a secret code about saying what Nicodemus and him was talking about. Go back to Deuteronomy 29, 28, and 29. It's this clue that compares it, and it says, what's the problem? Why have we been scattered? Why have we lost our privileges? Why have we lost the covenant? Why do we not know the truth or who the Messiah is or what are we supposed to be doing? Because we have not taught the Scripture from the perspective of the truth. Judah didn't, and then the whole Christian church hasn't. But we can. Amen. We can come back to teach and learn these words. So the point is, if it's in the Aleph Bet, that is the full measure, the presentment of Elohim by his own standard, by his own design, then if we go back and we look at the meaning of these letters, the 22 letters, it's his DNA. It's him. And so here's the point. Did he give us a mechanism to know who the true Messiah is, to know where the truth is? I would say it's in the identity, the one identified by the meaning of these 22 letters. So if you study the 22 letters, you're studying the face of Yahweh. If you study the 22 letters, you are beholding Mashiach, Yeshua. The study of Hebrew is not a foreign language. It is the language which established and made this entire universe. Adam, the dust of the earth was picked up and formed his body. He then breathed. The word ruach is breath. The ruach of HaKodesh, the Kodesh, that authorized, authentic from Aleph through Tav is the breath. He breathed into him. The ruach, which is Aleph through Tav. So the composition of his mortal frame is the Aleph Bet. His breath breathed into him from Yahweh is the Aleph Bet. And then he spoke to him in Hebrew, Paru Uravu. Be fruitful, abundantly multiplying in Hebrew. Our very being, body and breath, which is life, and our mind, our cognitive thinking processes are calibrated to the Hebrew alphabet. Everything else is distorted confusion. To go back to this is to go back home, to go back to reality. So as we study this language, it should answer everything about sane psychology, about putting the kingdom here, about manifesting Messiah, returning to the words of Torah, exalting Yod He Vav He, because that's who he is. Everything short of it is Elohim Achrim, regardless of what we believe. Anyway, we're at the end of a break here. Thank you.
We sing Baruch Atah Yahweh.